You're listening to Faith Connections podcast, where we are dedicated to connecting you to your faith. And now your hosts, Chris and Mari Torres.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Faith Connections. It's Chris and Mari
Torres.
Howdy.
Howdy.
How you doing, cowboy?
I'm doing just great. How about you?
I'm doing mighty fine, sir.
I reckon.
We want to welcome you to Faith Connections. We hope that you enjoyed last week's episode where Dr. Luisa Caprano shared the message of, really finding triumph around the trauma. And I have her book here. I know I talked about it. So I just wanted to, if you haven't got it, if you didn't know the name of the book, Push, Then Breathe. You can find it on Amazon, but it's a very great story testimony that I feel like you'll find some encouragement around it. But we're going to keep it moving.
Yeah. So again, this is all part of our conference, mental health conference we had here in Poteet. If you missed it, you're catching every single speaker that we've had. So again, like, subscribe, share it for encouragement. If you know somebody that can attest to what the speakers are bringing. Each speaker has brought something totally different, but it's been great so far.
Yeah.
And I definitely took away from this whole conference. But we have another guest speaker here today, an awesome message and a psychologist. But I'll let you introduce somebody.
Yes. So next, you are going to hear from Dr. Dennis Scholes, and he's going to be talking about KWYK, and it's an acronym, Know What You Know, KWYK. And so know what you know. There's a lot of different information that he shares to help, so it's kind of like a collage of art.
Yes.
There's so many nuggets and information that he kind of brought together that can help encourage you, can help as best practices, tips. So we hope that you share, you subscribe, you like, and you tune in.
Well, I'm really delighted to be here. It's not far from home in Somerset. Delighted to see all you here. It's really been a blessing to me already. The number of speakers you've had even though 75 years old, sometimes old dogs can learn a few new tricks. And I've learned a few things from the speakers already and from the performers and the musicians. It's been delightful. Also to say how encouraging it is to see so many young people. As you get older and you start to think, hey, what's wrong with younger people? You don't, the church I go to at Somerset Methodist is a fairly traditional church, been there 100 years. When my wife first joined, I think at age 50, we were the youngest people in the congregation, except for the little bitty grandkids. So to see young people engage with Christ and discipleship and spreading the word to others is very uplifting to a senior citizen. So thank you for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I think I got some slides, right? Yeah. Doctorate in 1975. So I've got about, how many years is that? 49 years postdoctoral work. My neurons are a little crowded, getting rusty. But still, I want to share with you a few things from that experience. When I first started working on the presentation and talked to Chris, I was delighted to get invited. And I put a few slides together. In my military career, we kind of learned, hey, each slide is about 5 minutes, and the first cut at it had 56 slides. So did you guys bring your sleeping bags? So I got it whittled down to 11 slides, and some of them are just some things I want to share with you, are not long didactic things. Over the past few years, actually started during COVID, I started having wake up rhymes come to my mind when I woke up, and I'd get up and I'd start writing them down, kind of little prayer poems. So I have a few of those that I hope some of them, not much of a singer or other performer, but to have poems come to mind for an old fellow, maybe there'll be something in them that may touch some of you and give you opportunities to think about some of the things that I share. So the second slide, a little bit of wit and whimsy, some witness, some wisdom, we'll see, and then just sort of wanderings and wonderings of an old grump from Somerset. In the military, how many folks out there have been in the military, a spouse in the military? Okay. Some of the things I learned from the military years is that when you give a briefing, you got to, one, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, then tell them what you told them, and have no more than 3 main points. So I want you to tell me at the end if I abided by that. Also, I've worked with some pastors, and I learned about what the perfect sermon amounts to. Have you all heard about that one? You got to have a dynamite opening and a dynamite ending and have them as close together as possible. So we'll see if I live up to that. So I don't want to take more than my assigned time. I thought I had a couple friends up here that would yank me off the stage if I rattle on too long. Chris, Richard is missing. Where'd he go? Richard LeBee. There he is. So he promised that he'd start going like this if I rattle on too long. Okay. So one other thing I did want to take advantage of, because this invitation had me get off the tire already. It's time to stop. Okay. Had me sort of pushed me to say a little bit of my own personal witness. I've been thinking about this at my own church for a period of time and haven't gotten brave enough to get up and talk about that. So I want to share a little bit. I think you've seen an excellent example of presenting witness from some of our other presenters. It's been wonderful to hear. For myself, you mentioned I went to parochial schools, no kidding, from second grade through PhD. A lot of study of the Bible and catechism and all that sort of thing. In undergraduate school, after my sophomore year, I got married, and stayed married for 20 some odd years. And it's like, hey, before I was 21, I had our first kid. So it was like babies having babies sort of thing. With that, an obligation to work my way through college and et cetera, I stopped getting to church. In high school, I used to go to church like almost every day before going to class. That was kind of a flaw. There's some things about being able to take care of family obligations, and being a traditional male in America, you start getting into that routine of having to be a provider and a protector and all that kind of stuff, and other important things can fade away, and you can get, in some ways, arrogant that you've got everything under control. And lo and behold, staying away from a relationship to God, to Jesus Christ, that over years causes some vulnerabilities. It's kind of the, what I call later, the ignorance of the arrogance of thinking you have everything under control. And it wasn't until I got back to Somerset, like some 30 years later, and with an opportunity to go back to church. I had 2 old World War II gentlemen who I ran into when I first arrived in Somerset, drinking coffee at the Liars Club at what used to be the Valero. And before we got done with a cup of coffee, like 3 of them, they all invited me to go visit their church. And I'm thinking here in this new small town, I was raised in a small town about the size of Somerset. It was too darn big when I came to retire to move back there, so I stayed in Somerset. But a cup of coffee, an invite to church, and we went ahead. It's like 3 blocks from our home, and we've been going ever since. I think my wife, Karen, was not raised in a religious community. So with that in mind, I said, well, I think the Baptists can be too strict. Well, let's try the Methodist one. And there are a lot about Methodist practices that's very similar to what I remembered from my Catholic upbringing. So it wasn't until then that I got on a path to reconnect to a religious and spiritual connection and realize some of the years of, let's say, going astray and losing my way got mended. And so that's how I got to be here, is through that connection. I want to mention one other thing. I'm supposed to do any disclaimers, but I have one relationship that I think led to meeting Chris. I have a youngster, I actually call him, my wife and I call him our son, but he's about 6'6", retired Army fella. But we together tried to start a nonprofit to help veterans with animal-assisted therapy with equines, with horses. Big fellow's named Jim Shalley. We had a nonprofit we started called New Tactics, but it got to where it's costing me a little bit too much money, and we didn't get grants from the Texas Veterans Commission. I said, Jim, I got to back away a little bit. He is still doing that program. It's a little bit further south of me. I'd encourage you to go on www.newtactics6.org And he's doing some wonderful work with veterans still. So look that up. He's got a good web page, and I'm kind of in the background still trying to be supportive, but guarding my pocketbook a little bit. But please look that up. I promised him that I'd mention his program. So with that, which slide are we on? I got to turn around and look. There we go. Okay. Wanted to mention a little bit about the bottom line, wanderings and wanderings. A collage is still art. I've got my oldest daughter is an artist. She's beautiful painting she does. But I couldn't get much past making a collage out of things. So the things that I present is kind of a collage of different things I want to share, and hopefully something will be of use to you. So there's going to be a little bit of my prayer poems and rhymes, a little bit of pensées. There's a book called Pensées by Pascal. I didn't mention that. Do you all remember Steve Martin, the comedian who became famous later? We saw him live at South Bend when I was in graduate school, back when he was wearing the arrow through his head and doing, making balloon animals and that sort of thing. Is quite funny. But he actually said, hey, he went to college, and he said, I studied Plato and Socrates, and I learned enough philosophy to confuse myself the rest of my life. Well, I too studied Plato and Socrates and a few other philosophers, but also the Bible when in undergraduate school. There's also going to be a little bit of a reference to some science and some views based on science, and then just some tail-end things where I ask you to think about things that I've shared in hopes will be a benefit to you. Let's go to the next slide if we could, and I'll just read one of my COVID-era poem prayers that came to mind. I know it's kind of an eye chart for you. I'm really pretty simple for a complicated man. There's much about which to wonder, yet easy knowing where to stand. The sands of time keep falling through one lifetime's hourglass. Long before you realize it, the greater part has passed. But standing on the golden rule and loving God and all, each sunrise gives a blessing and prevents a doleful fall. Complex as we may make it, the simple part is best. Go through life accepting just how much we all are blessed. Okay. So the next slide, a little bit of witness. Chris mentioned some of my background, fourth of 11 children, parochial school, that sort of thing. And I mentioned in particular you imagine being one of 11 kids. It's important to establish your own independence and identity. But if you take it to extreme, like I mentioned I did, start to counting on your own capabilities, your own self too much. And I'm really glad that through that period of time, and I've been married for over 50 years, just been to two different ladies. The loss of the first marriage after 20 years and 3 children was in part because I counted too much on myself. That could have been different, but I was blessed to get a second chance. Actually, I think last week in our liturgy took something from James, and it discussed about, hey, Lord, how many times should I forgive the neighbor who has offended me? And apparently in Jewish law, that 3 times. And asked Christ, well, how many times? Should it be 7? And the answer was no, 70 times 7. To be forgiven over and over and over again, and take the time to know that Christ has forgiven you is an important idea to keep you going throughout life, especially during those years when maybe vainly you have lost connection to that and haven't forgiven yourself. I still, even at this point, 75 years later, I still spend some time wondering about the factors and happenings that led me to some insight to get me back and reconnected to Christ, and how important a component that is, even to a person who studied all this stuff in science and psychology for so many years. Those things cannot replace the spiritual part of your life and counting on God and Jesus. I want to take a little bit of a deviation into what I call whimsy, and I call it the best sausage. I'm not a gun guy, and I'm not a tractor guy, but I settled in a part of Texas where, boy, you got some wizards who know that stuff. They can say the number and a brand of a tractor, and they know exactly what the other guy is talking about. And I haven't got a clue. Same thing for guns. I've got friends that probably have collections of 50 guns, and they can talk to what is the gauge of the bullet, what's things that I can't even understand. They know that really well. And I've met a number of folks in Somerset who really do know their stuff. And one thing that I learned that they really, really do know is they all have their own recipe for sausage. In particular, they're all deer hunters. And what makes the best deer sausage? And I've listened to it and that sort of thing. I've got one, I kind of consider him my Somerset big brother. He's the same age as my oldest brother. And he's taught me key things like, hey, it's too wet to plow. And it ain't hay till it's in the barn. And don't park behind the backhoe, things like that. And don't push the cattle too hard or they'll get in your pocket, some key sort of sayings. Well, one thing in particular is he did stick his neck out and share with me the best recipe for a deer sausage. And I said, well, Bill, what is that? He said, the best recipe for a deer sausage is 100% pork. He's probably right. So. I mentioned the next line a little bit and become aware of just how ignorant was for a fellow who in maybe ways got overeducated in areas that deviated me away from believing things I was taught by my parents from the Bible and from sermons and from church, and how ignorant was to be so arrogant that I thought I could handle everything and I knew so much. So I thank Somerset and Somerset Methodist Church and my wise buddies there who both prayed for me, forgave me, even when I don't listen to their wisdom, and to be back reconnected with Christ. Lord, forgive me for my vanity, arrogance, and my disbelief. And in some ways, I realized that what I was going through is in some ways what really was the original sin. It was the pursuit of eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was the error, to believe that by consuming that they were going to be as omniscient and as all-knowing and as all-powerful as the God that created them. What a terrible, ignorant mistake to make. So that arrogance, hopefully I've left a good part of that behind. I still pray not to lapse into it again. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to learn and do what I have done, and I realize that I'm obligated for the things that I can do and facilitate others. That's what I've been assigned to do. I did work in the mental health system as a supervisor of adult mental health programs from Eagle Pass to Kennedy. And the same sort of thing up in Alaska, actually the whole state mental health program for a while. And it's disheartening to see the limited investment that can happen in mental health. And it is faith organizations, nonprofit organizations covering for the inattention to that I think is going to bring opportunities to save and help others. So an event like this is on that path, and I thank you all for engaging in it and believing in it. There's so many people that need that help. I want to go to another, thank you. The next slide for a prayer poem that kind of touches that point for me, if I might. No person is omniscient. No single person knows the way. We each are free to struggle through, unbound to some other's light and never stray. Recall it is in God we trust, not the sage, the prophet, the siren. God shared some light in what was written. Read and heed, If sinned, be forgiven. A know-it-all is such a one who steals a trait of only God. Be assured the way, truth, the light, comes not from one who treads this sod. Vanity from knowing much can indeed get out of hand. Humble yourself in sight of the Lord and know you are just a woman or a man. Light, more light, eternal light, each glimmer, a gift from the Almighty. Almighty, everlasting, all-knowing, yes, it is God who is omniscient. For us, it is our trust, yes, our faith, which is truly sufficient. Amen. So a little allusion to some psychology science that's made simpler, at least for me. I want to comment a little bit about lumpers and splitters. I'm kind of what I call a lumper. You get to the point where I read a lot of detail and I got to roll it up and roll it up and roll it up and get the kind of the abstract thing and use that as sort of a underlying tacit way to make judgments about things and ways to go. Other people are so much better about what I call splitting, but they get into the details. It's a personality difference that I've learned to appreciate. I need to have the complementary part in my life. For those of you who have the ability to cite and master citations from Holy Scripture, I admire that enormously. I kind of count on my ability to kind of get the message and maybe keep me, having been returned to a connection with Jesus, to make wise judgments and do proper things. But you folks who can do those citations, what a gift you have. Count on that, share that whenever you can, please. For me, an individual person is a basic unit for psychology. Psychology is all over the place anymore. Occupational psychology, sports psychology is intruded into all sorts of things. But for me, this kind of psychology I count on has the individual person as its key element. It's a single unit, a person passing through time from conception, birth, growth, maturation, aging, death, and unto life everlasting. And that's when I do my clinical psychology work, that's what I'm thinking about. The key thing about a lot of that is that as individuals through the maturation stage, I know, having studied and done research in child cognitive development, we change what we think, how we think qualitatively as we mature. I think in the Bible, there's a point where it talks, hey, when I was a child, I thought as a child, et cetera, et cetera. And then now that I am a man or an adult, I think as an adult. Sometimes, and I think it's been referred to a couple times here earlier, especially in relationship to trauma, things that now are called adverse child experiences. When I was going through training, it was, hey, pay attention to early developmental experiences. The issue is, in our adulthood, we may have gotten through things as a child, but we felt about them, we thought about them in qualitatively different ways. And in a therapy setting, especially if someone comes and looks for an aide, a counselor, a person to interact with, sometimes is to rediscover or reconnect with those ways we no longer think and to discover them and get them back into conscious awareness so it can be examined carefully, realized for what it is. I think someone talked about those derogatory words earlier that you may have heard as a child and how it imprints and affects you for the rest of your life. Sometimes it takes recalling adverse child experiences and being able to share that with a caring and trusted agent to realize that those are no longer true. They weren't true at the time. They were just the imposition of others who may not have had the wisdom to have your best interest at heart at the time they laid that negative message on you. So that's kind of the approach that I incorporate anytime I work with an individual. For me, each one of you is the only expert in being you. one of the things I did in graduate school, I studied child cognitive and language development. And in particular, I went to grammar school. I mean, we go to grammar school, you used to have to analyze and break sentences down and put them on tree diagrams, and here's the verb, and here's the noun, here's that, all kind of stuff. That kind of study for kids as they grow, there's a neat kind of development they go through as well. But they're mastering a set of rules for language. I want you all to, who know English grammar, tell me if the following sentence is grammatical. Here's the sentence. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. If you think that's a grammatical sentence, raise your hand. Is it a meaningful sentence? It's nuts. But in point of fact, in terms of the rules of grammar, it is grammatical. Colorless green is nuts. Ideas sleeping furiously, that's nuts. But it is a perfectly English grammatical sentence. The same kind of thing can happen as we develop our own rules by which we live. We follow those rules, they get us through bad times, they help us maybe through in good times, but sometimes the rules that we mastered when young can be identified when they're re-examined in our advancing age as being darn crazy, even though they helped us at the time. And to be able to redesign, rediscover, and replace those helpful at the time rules with ones that are more suited to a fully developed and spiritual person is what would be the outcome of therapy. So you're all, each of your own experts. When you go to a counselor, don't expect them to give you all the answers. I remember one of the books when I first went to Wilford Hall, moving from research to clinical psychology, I was being a little bit too expert, and a wise instructor psychologist had me read a book called If You Meet the Buddha on the Road, Kill Him. He was trying to teach me, hey, don't be such a smart aleck. You don't know it all, Dennis. That directive instructional sort of approach isn't where people are. The people have their own issues. They're having a difficulty getting through current life circumstances because the things you learned while younger are maladaptive for your now situation in life. So it was a wise fellow had me read that, and I've tried to pay attention ever since. I also want to do one other quick demonstration. On the bottom, it talks a thing about gifts that are differing. I'm not going to go through all these different types of therapy, etc. Lots of symbols. Acronyms can drive a military guy nuts, and if you're a military psychologist, even more nuts because there's too many things to learn. But I want to, all of you who might have a pen or paper, I want you to get your pen or paper, and I'll count seconds for you. Just do a simple little task for me, and when you're done, raise your hand up with your pen. When I say go, I want you to just write your signature. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3. Raise your hand. We're done. 4, 5. Okay. Now I want you to do something else. All of you can write your signature in a couple seconds. Put it in your other hand, your pen, and I want you to write your signature. Go. 1, 2, 3. Raise your hand. We're done. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we got some more. 8. Okay, I think I gave you enough chance. That's just a demonstration. Clearly, you've got your strength in your dominant hand. Things are real easy with your dominant skill. Not so easy with your undominant skill. But the important thing is you still could do it. There's a variety of different theories about personality. Personality being described as a relatively enduring pattern of behavior that kind of influence how you will by and large behave from time to time. You use your strengths real easy, but you have the complementary skill. Listen, I'm actually an introvert. I'm up here being extroverted talking to y'all. I can do it, but that's not my strong suit, being an outgoing extrovert type of person. All those different kind of features of personality, don't give up on them existing for you. They do exist. They can come help you. If you count only on your strengths, sometimes you may miss the complementary skill, especially if we're rediscovering things that need to change in your current life. We may ask you to count on your less developed proficiency, and it can be a blessing to you. Thank you for putting up with that with me. Somebody tell me about my time. Richard, how bad am I getting here? Cut it off? Okay. So I'll start getting shorter about humankind's basic pursuit for me and as a psychologist. Really, we're always trying to solve what life is all about. That's what humans do. We're solving problems, getting answers. You're building your own individual expertise to master life, its challenges, its traumas, its triumphs, and its blessings. Having gone through that arrogant, ignorant stage, I realized, hey, wait a minute. Even though developing your own grammar to get through life, you don't have to start from scratch. Plato, Socrates, the Bible, the words of Jesus Christ, is a heck of a good place to start. Give yourself a head start. Share that with your children also, so they're not also wondering about how to get things done. Are we on? What slide are we on? Okay, I'm going to start getting a little bit shorter here. Go to one more slide. There's one of the approaches I learned early on, and someone else touched on these kind of goofy beliefs. It's called cognitive behavioral approach. I want to just mention 3 basic irrational beliefs that we can challenge ourselves with. This is from a fellow named Albert Ellis, who I actually got to meet. He was kind of one of the originators, things having to do with cognitive behavioral therapy. Really, it came out of older philosophy, the difference between essentially being hedonistic and being a stoic. There should be some jokes about the hedonist and the stoic go into a bar and kind of stuff. But I'll work on those separately from the prayer poems I'm working on. But in particular, people can, and somebody used the shoulda, woulda, coulda type terms earlier, and how we can actually torture ourselves with things that are irrational to say. I should have done this. Well, if they're put in a position with a counselor or advisor, say, well, prove to me why you should have done something different. And in point of fact, sometimes it amounts to just restructuring. So, well, it would have been better if I had done this. But if you torture yourself, you say you really messed it up because I didn't do what I should have. You can't prove that you should have done that. So the key thing in that is demanding fairness from others, demanding or expecting fairness from the world, and then also demanding or expecting or striving for perfection in ourselves. When I first started about this presentations, how am I going to make this perfect? I can't do that. Let's just do it so I can offer you something that maybe after I've spoken, there may have been something that helped you positively. That's the goal I should have set for myself. Can't be perfect anyway. But do take some time to learn how to dispute and reject these woulda, shoulda, coulda type of things that make you less content, less happy, less able to appreciate your day-to-day life and the friends and loved ones that you have with you. Let's go to the next prayer poem if I could, and I'll start winding down. I want to make one comment. It's the second one. So this one is aglow, not dreary. Where comes the joy? Where comes the light? Surely not from fear, surely not from fright. Be mindful, all we have is from God. We ourselves own nothing, not gold, not sod. Smile at the blessings that He has for a time bestowed. Feel content while your life in blessings so unfolds. Distress, sadness, anxiety, or worry, those you can't cast off, so each day will not be dreary. Thankful and happy, full of gratitude, that's the good life. Don't be fooled. Heaven was not promised to us while we are here on earth. Blessed in life we are after baptismal rebirth. Embrace your family, your friends, your neighbors, all in one body. We live our lives immersed in God's favors. Be ready, lamp lit, when comes your final hour. We've been graced on earth, so in heaven we will flower. So nourish, tend to, let flower your soul, so here on earth it does grow. Be joyfully certain the springtime of heaven is where grateful souls are all aglow. Amen. Thank you. I'm probably time-wise going to discontinue the last slide so you can ask me questions about it later. But I want to talk about this last prayer poem, Peace Be Still, and have you imagine, I still work part-time with a few clients, veterans and others who are not being served by the existing mental health system, which, by the way, if you find someone who might need an initial contact because of being old enough for Social Security and retired military income, I don't need to charge people to come for like a first visit, and I actually adjust my own scale because it bothers me that south of Highway 90 there's so few mental health services. It's a mental health services desert. So the church has made an office to me for free, so I enjoy that. So you can, I think I got my phone number on here somewhere. Not, ask me if you have someone who wants to at least have an initial contact with someone. I'm not going to work full time anymore, but I feel bad to have been blessed with what I've been given to not be doing some work to help individuals when that's been the gift given to me. So feel free to call. So this particular Peace Be Still came to me when I was spent a lot of time thinking of a very challenged fellow that I've worked with who's having difficulties, and I think an event like this or an outreach from something like this could save this young man's life, soul, and his happiness. So this is what came to mind for me. Where's the bear? Where's the lion? Where's the train? Where's the lightning? Fear not, my child. Do not panic. You are loved, forgiven, saved, not tragic. You have a calling. Your time is not near. You are to spread blessings afar and right here. God is awesome. God is good. So you should be in your neighborhood. You're not to be perfect, just human like we all, but to show your faith in God after you fall. No bear, no lion, no evil beast. Be your blessed self till called to angelic feast. Amen. With that, I think it's about time to do this, and just want to thank you all for listening to Grumpy Old Man. I'm probably the jolliest grumpy old man you'll run into for quite a while, but I like claiming to be a grumpy old man. Between that and calling my wife Karen, the domestic commander, she doesn't have my salute yet. She thinks she knows my hearing's getting bad, my listening's worse. She wasn't able to be here today, but she keeps me on the straight and narrow. But if there's something I've offered you that you can think about and benefit from, I'll feel blessed that I've had that impact. Thanks for letting me chat with you today. Thanks, Chris, for having me. God bless.